often the rest we pursue isn't actually genuine rest. It's like, so we think it's restful to, I can sit on the couch for a minute, or I can lay down
for a minute
and scroll,
or 25
right?
minutes.
Scroll.
Yeah.
And then, so I think we know very little true rest. And so it's not something we long for as much as we would if we knew it well.
This is the podcast. What if that was the song?
Jeopardy?
Yeah. Okay. What is it with Jeopardy that has been sucking me in lately where I'm just like, I think I can get good at this show. And I get like 7 accurately.
That's pretty good.
I know. Okay. Favorite game show growing up. Let's start there because this is what the people want to know. Were you
Family Feud was like always on our. Does that mean favorite? I don't know. It's the one I've put at least hundreds of hours of Family Feud.
Like hundreds of hours?
It's
not
bad. Yeah.
That's bad.
It's
yes.
I probably watched most Price is Right.
Price is Right.
In fact, Plinko was my favorite game, which we have a
we've gone
version of Plinko in the building here today.
Bring your ladder and you can practice Plinko. I Press Your Luck. Do you remember this game? This was
Which
a
one's that?
no whammy, no whammy, no whammy. Stop.
It's back.
Yes.
It's back.
Yeah.
YouTube fact, you can go look up Press Your Luck cheat code.
I have seen that.
And this dude, he had memorized the orientation
really?
of where the thing bounced and won book a buck.
Yep.
And he acted surprised every time.
Did you see the documentary about the guy who he memorized all the prices on Price is Right, and then he was in the audience telling people the exact price, and he got a couple of showcases for people like right on. And then you won both of them.
That's a gift. I mean, I'm glad God hasn't called me to that.
We don't bring any of that to the table here.
Like if there was vehicles, he memorized. He's like, okay, which accessories do they have, and he knew the price sheets for all of it. So there you go.
I've given up my ability to remember things like that. Back of baseball cards. Do you remember your favorite toy you played with growing up? Like, they don't have toys anymore. You can't buy kids toys.
You can't.
No, you just download apps.
Okay.
You have a baby. That's not a kid.
We had a 20 questions ball, and it's like, what was it? Vegetable, mineral, or animal, or never mind. But it asks those questions, you narrow it down.
The magic 8 ball?
No,
I don't think we need to pray for
I know
you.
it was different. It was 20 questions ball.
I had a lot of Star Wars.
Yeah.
The toy that I was most excited to ever get for Christmas was the speed bike. They would fly through the trees.
Yeah.
Return of the Jedi.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I know my Star Wars. Yeah. I too was a Star Wars character in Legos. I remember renaming all of my Star Wars guys after WWF wrestlers. And then one time, the Stormtrooper, who was Coco Beware, his leg fell off. And I don't know what was in me, but I actually conducted a funeral for I lined up all my Star Wars guys and had a moment, and then I realized that my brother and my dad were looking at me and laughing at me, and it's a scar and wound that still lives deep inside. Which is honestly, this is where I want to go today.
Great.
Perfect transition. I want to talk about the state of your soul and the inside you. And recently, there was just this pondering moment where I'm like, I don't know that all within me is all okay. Felt a little bit scattered and lost. And I think there's a lot of access points to the physical you, the output you, the goal you, but what's actually bringing life into your soul? How do you even monitor the state of your soul? And I'm curious, just on the front end, are there any practices or ways where you kind of even check the temperature, the gauge of the inside you? Because there's that other part where you're inner dialogue, right? So I'm just curious, do you guys have anything that you jump into to kind of go wow, how am I doing in here?
Yeah, I think we as a staff in church talk about RPMs. This is kind of a big thing. How are you doing relationally, physically, mentally, spiritually, energy, finances? So that's a little external, right? But it does kind of give a barometer of how are you, because those are all different facets of you. And so I'd say that's probably one we look at quite often. And then, I think one thing we kind of talk about a lot is just rest. How much are you resting? So.
Yeah, and that was the message just this past Sunday. And if you haven't checked it out, talking about that sacred day, I don't know if you can relate to this. One of the best ways for me to know what's going on inside of me is Jenny. And so Jenny has this way of like, your reactions are just more sharp, more strong, more, you okay? And
Got
like
an edge.
yeah. And it's almost like I didn't know I went to that place of like not being well, but someone on the outside had permission to kind of speak into that.
Yep.
And so I think there's a way where if we actually think about what really matters, it's the inside.
Yeah.
And the outside stuff is beneficial. Don't get me wrong. Jesus asked for fruit. He asked for us to bear fruit, but that's only a byproduct of what's on the inside of you. And I think one of the challenges Jesus kind of lifted in scripture over and over again was the Pharisees were more mindful of the outside action behavior and like, don't go here, don't touch this. And they wanted to put all these boundaries and things in, but it was from so that other people could see I'm good rather than actually have it be out of the overflow of I want to keep the inside of me good. And just recently I've been surprised by the state of my soul. And it's interesting to think about like, how do you refresh the inside of you? What does it look like to lean into that? Like I need to get more centered here with Christ. And I would say it's also tricky if church is just a Sunday thing for you. If God is a part of, I mean, this is my old junior high kind of thing. A lot of people treat Christianity, their faith walk, as a slice of their life rather than the sauce that's holding all of the toppings and all. Like if your life's a pizza, I think God wants to be the crust, the sauce, and like everything else is sprinkled on top. And yet so often we're like, here's my spiritual life, here's my physical life, here's my relational life. And that's a dangerous kind of zone. And yet, if no one ever taught you how to infuse the soul, the spirit into everyday realities, like being at work, like being a neighbor, it's a tricky journey because church is that time I think about God.
Yeah.
And so what are things that you guys have found that have allowed you to kind of put a fresh wind in the everyday versus like, yes, read your Bible. Yeah, like, right? Like, I think there are spiritual disciplines, but like, what are some other things that have refreshed your soul that you're aware of?
Yeah. And I think the answer to that, we have our own answers, but it depends on for somebody, how much flexibility do you have? Are you a mom at home with a bunch of kids, or do you have a job where you can bug out for a second or check out? And so, but I think for me, just understanding, I think one of the feelings I have is that like what's coming out of me, like you were saying. And so anger or one that comes out in weird ways is restlessness. Like, I feel like I want to do something. Yeah. What am I, and if I can't figure out a good outlet for that, it usually creates like chaos, or like when I decide to help clean at home, like, it's all clean right now.
Becky's like, oh, he's off.
Yeah.
He just did a dish.
Yeah. One for me is just getting out and going for a walk or a bike ride. And even if it can't be like, have got 45 minutes, it's like, I just need to step out of the office for a second or go to another place and reset.
Yeah. There's no one encouraging us to be.
Yeah.
It's go after and do. And I think that's interesting. The conversation I had recently with Jenny, putting Sabbath in practice. This is something like most Mondays for 20 plus years now, I have not worked. And yet I can drift towards things that aren't actually putting rest in me. So I've taken the new habit of turning my phone off.
That's good.
And, I'm doing what you're doing. Like, I'm like, Jenny, let's do a project. And she's like, I thought, you wanted to rest. And she's like, can you not sit still? And I'm like, no. And she's like, we got to figure out how you can be. And so I want to kind of like build the case of like 4 things that we can learn out of Genesis 1 and 2 that were present for a people who were, I think, at peace inside. Sin is what mucked it up. And and why I go back to Genesis 1 and 2 is it's returning there, right? This ongoing, ever-present walk with God apart from sin. And I just love this initial idea. And maybe it's not going to click for everybody, but like God breathed into Adam. Like there's this way where like I'm living on borrowed breath.
Yeah, that's good.
And so often my anxiety and my stress and my go and my do is because I am thinking it's on me when really I'm living on borrowed breath. And that for me, that statement when I read it, it just captivated me and like, well, that actually is more peaceful. And so then there's this author was talking, and he's like, and so our ongoing breaths, whether we're doing something or not, are acts of worship. And so I think going back to Genesis 1 and 2, whatever they were doing, it was honoring and worship to the Lord. And so if you're listening today, like I kind of want to hit 4 different things. This idea of what's it look like, and the heartbeat behind these is how do you fill up the inside you? I mean, I want to talk about like how to do a budget better and what is a parenting tactic and how do you date and all of those things. And but today I'm like, oh, I don't want to miss a chance just to kind of like, what if I'm on the inside feeling a little bit. So it's rest, it's serve, it's restraint and relationship. And I think what's interesting, if we go to the creation story, you got day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, 5, 6. Adam is made. We'll assume Eve. It's a little cryptic how all that kind of like, how does Genesis 1 relate to Genesis 2? We're not going to answer that question today. But then like, I can only imagine Adam wakes up and he's like, let's go. And God goes, isn't it great? Let's just sit back.
Yeah.
And I think going back to like the Sunday message again, if you missed it, just the sacred day of just like there's got to be rest. What is it that is inside of us that doesn't want to do that? That we have to achieve, that we have to like not sit still. I was talking with someone today and they're like, they're showing up on weekends to move projects forward that don't need to be moved forward and they don't know why, and you just, we've lost the ability to rest. Why is that?
Yeah, it's the classic how you doing question and you say busy and it's almost like
or tired
because you're so busy. And it's almost like a badge of honor, right? Yeah. Of like we find our self-worth from what we do. And so if we're not doing anything, then who are we? And so like sitting down doing nothing, not only is it hard, it's like, then what am I then if I'm not doing something? So yeah.
And often you're alluding to this earlier, often the rest we pursue isn't actually genuine rest. It's like, so we think it's restful to, I can sit on the couch for a minute, or I can lay down
for a minute
and scroll,
or 25 minutes. Yeah.
And then, so I think we know very little true rest. And so it's not something we long for as much as we would if we knew it well.
Yeah. And I think this is what the heartbeat and hope of this podcast is like, have you ever thought about what true rest is? And beyond sitting still, although I do think there's that, part of rest is recognizing you're not in control. And that handoff to God is the Genesis 1-2 story. Like, because it's all his.
Yep.
He's got it. He said, remember, I'm the Lord your God. And so the Sabbath, this idea of rest. And I also just think there's not only is there rest because God's in control, but recognizing that God is actually working too. In the Psalms, it says, unless the Lord builds a house, the laborer builds in vain. And I think some of the restlessness is the vain exposing itself like, oh, I'm trying to do this on my own. So what does rest look like? Again, I think you were right. It depends who you are and what stage of life you're in. Do you have anything that lately you have taken to that you've like can identify like that has been rest for me?
I love being outside. So that's probably always going to be top of my list. Answer is just being out in nature, and just unplugging, taking the AirPods out and like just being like, you kind of do have to force yourself to do that, to get away, to get some quiet, to unplug. And so the stopping, the not doing, I think that's for me, the first part of rest is like, what do I need to stop first? So, yeah.
Yeah. For me, picked back up reading a little more kind of as just like craving it. Sometimes I do it out of good discipline because I need to keep learning. but just enjoying that. Oh, I feel restful when I read, and so then getting outside.
Getting outside too. Yeah, I think for me, there's this idea of even a nap has been a recognition of just like, I can't afford to. Like, in fact, my mind is going so fast. Like, it's really challenging, but like I'm trying to even discipline. Like, how do I incorporate, like, it'll be okay. Now, again, if you have a little toddler or something like that, you probably can't embrace that.
Yeah.
The second idea is that, so Genesis, it gives us this kind of order or progression. Like Adam and Eve, they just day 7, nada. But they also got an assignment. And I think people miss this is a filler for your soul is actually doing work.
Yeah.
So work was never the curse. Work wearing you out, thorns out of the ground, like labor being hard, though it won't produce on its own. You have to, that's the curse. But there's purpose in work. That was preordained, pre-fall. And I want to just kind of say, like, there's this kind of conversation that someone had with me that said, hey, I'm told to take a day off, but then the church asked me to serve. And I'm just going to kind of I get the confusion of that or the dance of that, but like my experience overwhelmingly is when my heart is in check and I actually help someone else. I serve. I participate in helping someone else experience the Lord. It fills me up. Mission trips are actually far more restful, even though their output is uniquely different. And I think there's this way where work pre-fall wasn't cursed, and we can, because of Christ, we can still step into that and dance into that and participate in blessing people and serving people. And so I think there's a rest angle that is good for your soul, but I also think there's a serve angle.
Yeah.
In fact, later this month we got serve day, and this is typically a day that people aren't working, and I'm like, what would be so good for your soul? And it sounds so counterintuitive, but the Lord said it's more blessed to give than receive. And I can't tell you how many people who were like, I didn't want to sign up, and I signed up. This is the best day of my summer. This is best. Like, can you activate any memory of like serving filled you up? It let you kind of be recharged, even though there was an output to it.
Yeah. One big thing about serving is that inherently it's in community, right? It places you with other people. So like, I think that's a big part of serving is you get out of like, I think you do need alone time for resting, and you do need people time. And so like the serving gets you out of yourself and gets you with other people, being a part of a body, being a blessing, and even just using your gifts too. Like there's something like partnering with Christ, using the gifts he's given you. Like that's where the joy comes from, right? Is like the people at Serve Day that have way more skills than I have, and they're like, I'm like, oh my gosh, like, yeah, like, yes, you are.
You have a lot more skills. You've been kind of dogging your skills.
Maybe someday I'll.
Nunchuck skills.
I don't have many of those. No. We're working on it though. So.
How about you, Craig? You got this moment of like, oh, I remember serving and like just that added value to my soul.
Yeah. It's funny. I think of the example of like morning prayer. So 6 o'clock in some seasons, and those times where you're leading at it, you're like, oh man, I'm so tired. Mm-hmm. And then you do the output, and you do the work for it, and it's just so satisfying. And that's why I think there's this difference between we blend in how we work like across the board, and sometimes to apply it to work that God intends for it to be really meaningful and purposeful. So what's really tiring is to be really busy without purpose.
Wow.
And so then you go to a serve day or a serving opportunity, and you realize like, oh, this is a different kind of output. This is one that connects with purpose. I actually find peace into it versus more restlessness.
Really I love that angle of it, because that just heightens God's grand plan for the church, which was a body of people serving one another, being light, like the purpose behind that. Man, that's good for you. You didn't have that opportunity, some of you, all week long, and to be able to just step into that, that's amazing. There's so just kind of recap. We've got rest, we've got serving. Also, what we have in the garden is this restraint aspect of you can eat of any fruit, but this tree, like it was, and I think there's something about on especially what I would call a Sabbath day, but just even in your own life, there's things you could do, but restraint from doing it would actually be good for your soul.
Yeah.
So again, it's not bad to have your phone on, but the restraint to always have it in your hand, it's not bad to have TV on, but the restraint, it's not bad to eat a bowl of ice cream. So I will. It's good for my soul.
Amen.
But I think there's restraint angles that it helps me stay healthy, right? Like, and so that's the dance of this feels restful until it starts to move to lazy. Mm-hmm. It starts to move to sluggish. And so there's like this idea of, well, okay, so I want to activate, but I also like, so there's seasons, even though like I need to say no, I need to say not today. So this restraint thing, I think, is something that who gets to set that up? Like, who gets to speak into like, you probably don't need to do this as much, right? Because I'll lie to myself all the time. Yeah. I'm even going in this stretch where I'm actually going to turn my phone off for an entire week, right? Except for when I want to listen to music or a podcast, like this amazing one. I mean, it's got to be in the top 2,000 of podcasts being released 100%. Out of Southeast Iowa.
Yeah. That's our goal. Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean,
oh wait, this one?
This one. Yeah, this episode. But like, what are ways you would suggest guiding someone like to come up with a restraint plan? Because it's not all the time. I mean, this is why I fast in the beginning of the year.
Yeah.
Not because food's bad, not because I don't need it. And yet I want to keep first things first. I want to, and so there's some ways in like, how do we guide people to restraint in moments and seasons and days and years? What are things that you've put restraint in?
Yeah, I feel like I've been a case study in just like learning how to do discipline. Like
you're a case study.
Yeah, because like self-control, not a fruit of the spirit that I have, but I feel like I'm growing in that. And so I'd call back to earlier what you said about like Jenny being that mirror for you. Maybe you just need someone that you love to be like, how can I grow? And then if you love them and they love you, hopefully they'll give you a nice answer that's true.
What I've learned is you can't offer it before they ask. Like I can't tell Jenny, like, here's where you need restraint. That has not worked.
It's a lot easier when you ask, for sure.
With my kids, you got full permission. Just like, give me that. Done.
Mog and Pog.
Mog and Pog, man.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those things that doesn't happen on the fly. You've got to sit down and be in prayer about it. And just, I mean, think about it. If we just sat down and said, let's just make a list of things that we reflect on each day, what filled me up today and what drained me. And there's some things that drain you in a good way. That was output. But there's things that didn't work. If I'm honest, that's not a pattern that is helpful.
Yeah, I would agree that the inner side actually needs a still moment to ponder it. You can't put this on the checklist. It actually requires margin, which is something we talked about. And so what are some questions that you might ask someone if they're trying to like kind of come up with their plan of rest or serve or restraint? Like, what are some things you could ask yourself? I like the one you just kind of posed, like, in light of the last week, what filled me up?
Yeah.
What wore me down? What are some other questions maybe people could listen to or ask themselves?
It's like, you can ask. I just think of like the comprehensive questions you put out of like every year doing the review of like looking back in the past. And so I don't know if we could probably link that in the show notes and stuff, but just like having an hour or two where you can sit down and like ask yourself really good questions. But so that's the comprehensive side, and an easier side would be just like what would a healthier version of you be like? And not like I need to work out more, but like what would a healthier version of your soul look like? What do you need to invest in, and what do you need to let go of? So
one of the things I'd love to put together, like in light of that, is like what would we've referenced the slats on a bucket. And if your life is a bucket and there's different slats that represent maybe your finances, your relationships, your walk with God, just even kind of the RPMs, the EF, like if we could kind of just even share a little bit of like, hey, here's some things maybe like, how are you doing here? How are you doing here? Because that lowest slat, you can make other things really strong. I've got a friend who like, man, they are amazing at working out every day. And then they're like, man, I was hoping to get in my Bible today. I'm like, it's like, and like, but I'm guilty of the same kind of like, I'm prone to do A, B, and C. And I kind of, so I think just giving people like a framework of like, hey, here's some questions. So I've got some that I can include in the show notes. Yeah. Maybe we'll actually throw those show notes out there this time.
They're in there. I believe they're in there right now.
Yes. Amen. Just click that button.
Are you guys aware, like, do you have a plan for what time you go to bed and what time you wake up? I realize I'm not in a season where I have a plan. It's summer, like a little bit.
I want to disrupt my plan.
Yeah.
I'm ready to disrupt my plan.
Yeah.
Because my plan right now is child 1 wants to go take a shower at 9:30, and then child 2 wants to take a shower at like 10:30, and this guy wants to go to bed at 9:30.
You have to shower, or what is that?
Our bathroom is getting remodeled, and so they have to go through our room to get to the only shower, and so like
stampede going through your room at 10.
Yeah, and then So I would say here typically 10 p.m.
Yeah,
we don't have a TV in our room. We kind of have a house rule of if Jenny goes to bed, I go to bed. If I go to bed, Jenny goes to bed. We've just learned there's great health in that. I know I'm more prone to stay up late. I am wired for midnight and beyond. And so this has been a high learning lesson of like, how do I re-engage with the morning and things like that? But how about you? You got
10 to 6 is the goal probably. So yeah.
Yeah. You got a baby though.
Yeah. So then that's the goal. And then he just wakes me up whenever. So,
or do you wake up Rachel? Do you say like,
let's just say I can't complain. Rachel does all the work.
All right. This is okay. Here's the last one. We're going to kind of close with this. We've got rest. We've got serving. We've got restraint. Is there anything you're willing to say no to in the endeavor to say, God, because I want more of you in my soul? I think the purpose of saying no to something can get lost to like a weight loss regimen, or I think pushing it into like, God, it's for your glory. It's to kind of re-nourish my soul. The last one, what I found is relationships. And it wasn't good that Adam was alone. And you've got this connection. And I think, again, building off this idea of a Sabbath day, what gives you rest? Where can you serve? Serving is worship. And worship is honoring God, right? Where do you say no? Like, I'm going to trust God with this, but then like also who you can do life with. And so for me, I've just recognized there's been seasons where I've been close, and then there's seasons where I have not been close to different people in my life, and my soul is impacted by that. My schedule can be demanding, or like just the activities my kids are in, and I've just found myself I'm not sharing life with anyone. And I think this is one of the biggest challenges for men. Is there anyone I can just sit and chat with and have a moment of like, how bad did the Minnesota Timberwolves mess up their draft? How good are the Cincinnati Bengals going to be this year? Both things I have a lot of information on that I can share. But then also just like, hey, would you say that you're feeling empty or full in your soul? And so one of the things that we're actually working on is how to invite men into places of having conversation this fall. What was the thing that you've been kicking around the title like this?
It's fire. Just the idea of
fire.
Men getting around a campfire.
I mean, already I'm sold.
I'm in.
Did we bring our own matches? Say it again.
Just men getting around a campfire and just keeping it real, talking about what's really going on in a way that's it's outside of religion. It's like this, how is your soul?
Right.
And the intersection of God, where he is that answer to those things. And so,
and I love that. Like, if some of you might have heard like, wait, religion, why wouldn't we want God there? But Christ didn't come to introduce a religion.
Yeah.
He came to develop our relationship with God again. And his heartbeat was love God, love others. So I like that. We're going to get real. What does that requires us sharing life. How you doing? Not, are you keeping up with your quiet time? Are you like, right? Like that's, so how about you? Relationships, how have you watched those kind of play out and building in to your soul?
Yeah. I mean, relationships are everything, right? It's how you're seen, you're known, and you're loved through the relationships. There's a lot I could talk about. I think 2 a.m. friend is one thing we talk about a ton. I even just had a conversation last week with someone he was like, I was really just spiraling, and I just didn't think. He's like, I was gonna call you, but I didn't. I was like, like I would have loved to talk to you. You know, it's like I'd drop anything to like just hear you and pray for you, and I think that's most people is like, if you called, I would love to answer. And so that'd just be my encouragement, just maybe specifically for guys listening, just be like, there are, like, you don't have to live on an island. There are people out there that want to support you and encourage you and be that friend. So
yeah, that's awesome. I'm in this spot where I want to just encourage all of you, like, what would give you rest? Is there a way where serving is an opportunity? And I will highlight Serve Day is coming up. I think
July 20, right?
July 20, every campus. And if you're listening to this down the road, trust me, there's another opportunity for you to serve. The restraint idea is really just like, is something get in the way that could actually make me better? And I need to get it inside the fences. I need to maybe kind of just set it, get some guardrails, because that thing is just, and I'll just be honest, I know what yours is. It's your phone. And then who you doing life with. And so an invitation into walking with others is what I think are opportunities for your soul to be refreshed. Hey, this is the Something Different podcast. We'll catch you soon.